My name is Annie Yang. I use she, her pronouns. I'm at CZAX, so the Continuing Education Student Union at X University, and I'm the VP for Finance and Services. And the land acknowledgement today reads, Toronto is a dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited to treat into this treaty in a spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Thank you so much for attending this webinar today, and I will hand it over to our speaker, Michael Dick, to introduce himself and get started on the webinar.
That's great. Thanks very much, Annie. It's great to be here, and thanks to all of you for attending tonight. My name is Michael Dick. I'm a contract lecturer with the School of Professional Communication, which is part of what we used to call the Faculty of Communication and Design, but it's now called the Creative School. I've been teaching at Ryerson or X University in one way or another since 2014. And I've also taught several courses several times through the Chang School. So I'm quite familiar with the programming here and on the journey on which you're about to embark. For those who are new. I also regularly take courses, both in my own professional development as a professional communicator and as someone with a keen interest and expertise in policy. That's part of my background as well in public administration and governance. I continue to further my education, and I do that quite often through taking courses. Right now I'm actually just wrapping up a certificate in publishing here through the Chang School, and I'm hoping maybe to take some more language courses one day. My French isn't bad, but it could be better. So I always enjoy telling people that because I think it's really neat when you have a faculty member, an instructor who is learning alongside students simultaneously and who's doing a bit of both at the same time. So hopefully I can speak a bit tonight to both the learner perspective, which is obviously closer to where you are in your journey, but also to the instructor's perspective as well, and provide some insights into things that I think you ought to know or that you might want to consider in order to have a successful term with us. So I'm assuming right off the bat that many of you are probably fairly new to learning at a post-secondary institution. I'm well aware, there are plenty who come and take courses who have a lot of background in their own field or in other fields, or they're career changers, as we would say. So there's folks at all stages of their learning journeys, but I am going to try and speak a bit to folks who are brand new by providing some insights and resources that might help you with learning in general, in addition to using particular platforms and particular technologies to learn. But I'm also going to focus, I think, most significantly tonight on what's going on now for many of us in terms of remote delivery, virtualized learning, perhaps something that you maybe originally wouldn't have considered, but now because of the pandemic, it makes more sense for you and you just want to continue on. There are also folks who are taking something that's sort of been purpose-built for the online environment. Pandemic aside, it would have been online anyways, and maybe you're a little unsure how that works, or you're a bit unsure just whether it's right for you because your experience has mostly been in the classroom. So I'm going to try and reach a broad spectrum of folks tonight. But I'm going to do what we call teaching to the middle, which means I'm going to do a bit of this and a bit of that. And if you find that this is, if you find this is not enough and you need more to get up there, let me know in the Q&A. If you find that you have other questions, more advanced things perhaps you want to talk about, I'm also available to discuss that in the Q&A. So I'll share a few slides here, and hopefully we can put the link to them in the chat. And I'd like you to have the link, so you have a copy of this later, if you'd like to take one, but also so that you have access to a couple of the links I've put in at the end just by clicking on them. I'll hopefully, Annie, are we able to put that in the chat?
Absolutely, Michael.
Perfect.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I will let them do that while I get started here, and I'll share my screen in the meantime. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about online and hybrid learning, the differences, different kinds of tools. There's actually quite a lot to explore, so let's get started. So first of all, let's consider a few definitions because you've probably seen these terms thrown about, and they all seem kind of synonymous, and some of them are, but different universities and colleges approach it in a different way. So what I'll say is this. If you're taking a course where it says it's remote or it's virtual, or the term virtualized is often used at Ryerson, I've noticed, along with remote, what that usually means is that the course would have run in the classroom, but for our present circumstances, right? So what's happened over the past year or 2 years in some cases now is that the faculty member teaching the course has really had to adapt the material. They've had to take on a new challenge of teaching through this, type of environment. They've probably had to write some new course materials, develop additional activities to run in a session like this that may be a bit different than what you would see in a brick and mortar or a physical sort of classroom. So what you still see though is this idea of synchronicity, right? The idea that we're here at a certain time. So that's why on your timetable you'll still see the course in a scheduled position, typically, for ones that meet this mode of delivery. And the general expectation, unless communicated otherwise, and I'd say that's rare, the general expectation is you're going to show up to class here on Zoom at a certain time. Now, if the average class is 3 hours, let's say, that doesn't mean that you're going to be here for the whole 3 hours, and it certainly doesn't mean you're going to be listening to someone talk for the whole 3 hours. I think you'll find that over the past year or two, a lot of instructors have really put significant effort into their teaching practice and into trying to make these as interactive and enlightening and enjoyable, an experience as possible, even if there's a bit of that sense of nostalgia for the in-person class, and perhaps that's what we're going back to, hopefully, for some courses in the near future. So this is typically synchronous learning. So you'll get a schedule, you'll show up to class. I think you'll find that the average instructor these days, when it is a scheduled course, but it's online, there's some flexibility in the sense that, maybe there's a video, maybe they record a lecture, they'd like you to watch the lecture first, and then show up to class for a discussion. It's what we call a flipped classroom. It works just as well online as it does in a physical classroom, right? Where you do the prep in advance, basically, and then you show up and have more of a live discussion, or you do a tutorial or an activity. Maybe you have a lecture for 30 minutes here on Zoom, then you go into a breakout room, which is just like a little mini Zoom room with you and a few of your colleagues and classmates, and you do an activity, you report back to the larger group. Maybe that changes each week, right? Either way, the general expectation is you should block off that time. So if it says that your course meets on Thursday nights from 6:30 to 9:30, I would just block off that time, at least until you get the syllabus or the course outline and you see what the instructor's intentions might be, because it's fair game, to be available or to be expected to be available during that time. And of course, you don't want to miss out. That's the other thing, right? So again, every class will be a bit different. There might be some flexibility. The live portion, like we're doing tonight, might be recorded. So you can either watch again if you enjoyed it so much, and you want to, you miss something, you want to hear it again, fine. Or if you do miss it, you can watch it again. I would say that if that's going to be the case every week, you might rethink that. Maybe there's another section of the course that runs on a different night or something you could swap into. I think if you miss the live stuff every week, even if it is recorded, I don't think you're getting as full of an experience as you otherwise would have. But I mean, again, that's ultimately up to you, and it's ultimately a matter for you and your instructor in terms of the classroom arrangements. In courses where they specifically say online, Also, the term fully online is used. The term that's traditionally been used at the Chang School is distance education. So I think what you'd see on, RAMs where you get your timetable, I think you'll see internet dash distance ed or something like that. So those won't be scheduled, right? Like it won't be Thursday from 6:30 to 9:30. It would say, internet distance ed on the schedule there. That means you have a class that's usually almost entirely asynchronous. And I say usually asynchronous because although there are no regular meeting times, your instructor may say, hey, I'm going to run an optional tutorial, or I'm going to have drop-in office hours at a certain time. Feel free if you want to connect synchronously to do that. But these are courses that have been purpose-built for online delivery. And that's very different than the way that you would build a course for classroom delivery and then virtualize it, right? You can do both very, very well, but it's different methods from a learning and a teaching perspective, pedagogy, as we would say, to build a course for online delivery that's really almost entirely, if not entirely, asynchronous, so not occurring at the same time. I post a question, you post a reply, I post a comment, you post a reply. It's usually a little more interesting than that, but my point is it's asynchronous. Think of responding to emails, okay? So there is a greater focus on written interactions in these courses. I won't lie to you, you will be using discussion boards, and depending on the discipline, you'll be using them quite heavily in these types of courses. But there's usually other activities, there's usually other things to do. The deal, though, is that there's no mandatory, in-person meeting time if one is offered. So again, built for online delivery, you'll engage with modules and videos and content, but that's all there for you. And for the most part, you can do it according to your own schedule, so long as you respect the deadlines that have been set and the module schedule that's been basically set for you. And then a hybrid course is a mix of the two, as you probably figured, but again, it's purpose-built for that. So the Chang School has a lot of courses that are fully online or distance ed or online. There are some hybrid courses as well. This goes back years. I mean, I've been teaching online between the Chang School and the School of Professional Communication, the day program, as we say sometimes. We've been doing this online for a decade. I think publishing, where I was studying more recently, I think they've been doing this since the earlier mid-90s. There are times, and there are some of you who may remember this, especially if you're coming back to learning maybe at a certain point in your career. They often called these correspondence courses. You'd actually mail in your essay and someone would mail back the feedback. So again, this is not new, and Ryerson is certainly not new to any of this. What is new for many people is the idea of doing a class like this through Zoom. So that's going to be new for both teachers and for learners. Although by now, I think we've hopefully got the hang of it. So I think you'll find that you're going to be in good hands. So if you have a synchronous class, just to recap, you'll be using D2L, and I'll give you a demo of this soon, so don't worry if that doesn't make too much sense yet. You'll be using a platform called D2L Brightspace. It's what we call an LMS, or a learning management system. So some of you may be familiar with maybe a CMS or a content management system, maybe on a website or something. Same idea, it's purpose-built to hold course content, discussions, and things like that. So you'd be going into your course shell, that's the term we use. You'd find your syllabus and outline there. Usually assignment instructions and materials are there. Readings, whether those are links to documents, maybe through the library that we've put on what's called an e-reserve for you to read, or it could be details on how to buy the textbook, maybe, if that's what you're using, or any other equipment, lab packs, calculators, software packages, things like that. D2L is also where, I think with very minimal exception, you're going to submit assignments. So very simple to do. If you know how to attach a file to an email, that's basically all there is to it. And if you're a little uncomfortable attaching to a file and email, the good news is that's not too tough to learn. And there's lots of folks here who can help you to do that as well. But that's basically what's required of you. And what you'll see is that your instructor will mark through D2L as well in many cases. And you'll see a grade, and quite often feedback come back in return. Also on D2L, discussion boards, so course and assignment Q&A. If indicated, your instructor will set preferences. Feel free to email me for this, post your questions here for that. So you will use the discussion board to some extent in some synchronous environments, but it's more for Q&A. So in Zoom, you'd go there for your regular class time. As I mentioned, you might be put into a breakout, so a breakout room where you'd have more of a discussion, let's say. Group collaboration, that's something we don't talk about too often, but in this environment here, a lot of groups prefer working synchronously but at a distance, right? As opposed to having to find a time to get together, find a meeting room on campus. Most Chang School students, I would say probably all Chang School students, have other priorities in their professional and personal lives. So group collaboration can work very, very well online. You can use Zoom, like we're doing tonight, although not quite in the same mode. This is a webinar that's going to be a little more like you're going to see in your classes where you see each other. And if you've had a meeting in Zoom or taken a class before in Zoom, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, you'll have little options there to see participants. Often you'll have the ability to chat. You can use little icons, right, to express emotions, little emoticons. So Zoom can actually be a fairly interactive environment. There may be polls or Q&A, as I said. So you can do that too. You don't have to just leave that to your instructor. You can use the platform for that too for collaboration. Google Meet, I'll talk about Google shortly, but Google Meet is also a good option for that. You won't find too many instructors using it for classes. I don't find it quite as powerful for that. The sort of official tool for that is Zoom. Google Meet is official for other things like meetings. And you may find office hours, maybe you book an appointment with your instructor or they hold drop-in office hours. You'll probably find that most use something other than Zoom for that. Might be Google Meet, could even just be the phone. It depends on a number of factors. I'll just stop and double check. Okay, I see a question here about syllabi and about Brightspace and disability-related questions. I'm definitely going to come back to those at the end because those are excellent questions. So I'll definitely make sure to come back to those when I give you a bit of a demo of a typical workflow in Brightspace. So now we're in the asynchronous mode. So these are your online / distant / fully online courses. Obviously, D2L Brightspace, this is where 95% of the course is probably going to happen for you. You'll see all the same material there, a syllabus and outline. You'll also find module material each week. Most Chang School courses that are purpose-built for online delivery, they use a particular content management system that's outside of D2L, but you click on a link in D2L and it will pull up the modules for you. Again, I'll show you that soon. But you'll find all of your materials there. Again, if there's a textbook to buy, you'll get that information in there and on the syllabus. There could be library materials, as I said before. You'll get all that there. You'll do the same thing in all likelihood with submissions for assignments, but you're going to use the discussion feature in particular a lot more. So participation looks a bit different, obviously, in this environment. Having a lively presence in the discussions, that means you're in there a couple times a week typically. You're generally, and I'm smiling because I'm not very good at this occasionally myself. It will depend on each course. In some cases you might have some flexibility. This is the discussion of the week, but if you go back one or you go ahead one, that's okay. But that really will depend on the course. But the general expectation is that replies and posts are timely, and also that they're substantive. And substantive means not, I agree or I disagree or that's such a good idea. You have to add value, right? That's a very interesting perspective. I hadn't considered that before. I wonder if we, look at such and such a philosophy, would that also give us a certain perspective? Okay. Made that up, but hopefully you got the point there that I was trying to add something to the discussion, trying to advance it in a way, such that someone else could then reply. They may not, but it's a conversation, right? We're trying to get this point across to you that it's a conversation. So it's, I would say almost universally, it's got to be more than just I agree, I disagree. And again, how participation is graded will depend on the course, but there should be guidelines for that in your syllabus. And I think I would say on average, most folks are understanding that some weeks are tougher than others in terms of scheduling. But it's also acceptable to say, I can only give this course 80% of my effort. So if something's got to give, maybe I miss out contributing in the discussions a week or two. Obviously, there is an impact on the grade, but sometimes that's acceptable. I fully support students, for example, in making those sorts of decisions, because everybody has a different hope in terms of what they're going to get out of the course, grade or skills wise. And you have to fit this into your life. It's it's just the reality. People have to make those choices. So I think you'll find a lot of people are very empowering and supportive of that. But understand that in terms of contributing regularly and doing as well as you can on the participation component, meeting the criteria that are there is very important. So a couple other platforms, and I'll do a walkthrough of those too, just so you know that they're there and you have a bit of a sense of what I'm talking about here. Google Workspace. Some of you may have used that. If you have a Gmail account, you've been using it for years. It just you're going to see maybe some additional tools there that you hadn't before. Maybe you use this at your day job. Maybe you use something similar like Microsoft Office 365 and you use Outlook's web interface. And then Word, for example. For most of you, this will be somewhat familiar. It's just a different platform. You already have access to it with your Ryerson login. And you'll see Gmail just for your Ryerson account, obviously. All your other favorites, docs for documents, slides for slides, sheets for spreadsheets. Again, I'll show you that in a second, but everything that you would have, let's say if you have a personal account, you'll see it duplicated here. It's just this is for your Ryerson business, essentially. So that's great. You can keep it separate from your personal or other work accounts. It's also good to know that when we say these tools are official at Ryerson and are officially supported, it's not just the tech support, although it's partially that. It also means that the platform has gone through what's called a privacy impact assessment. So Ryerson is saying, you have that Gmail account, we can give you assurances around security and who has access to the data, right? So we stress using official tools because we know that there's a certain level of security there. So Google, for example, the Google tools, this is a great way for group work, right? A great way to collaborate. Use your Google Drive, which is just a place to store files. You can also start a Google Doc, invite your group members to that doc. They can edit it, they can give suggestions. You can do collaborative writing that way. Maybe you use a spreadsheet in Google Sheets and you check each other's math or your figures or something like that. So it's not just that you might use those for class. Your instructor might say, here's a document, everybody contribute something. I do that occasionally. But you can also use it as you wish for your other course-related projects and business. You may have some other platforms to use that will depend on your course. Teaching creative courses, I can tell you, we might use Adobe Creative Suite. So not everyone's going to have access to that. In general, there would be a specific license for students in a certain course. So there may be additional tools. There's one called Peer Scholar that people are using often now to promote peer review and collaboration. So I put my assignment in, but before the instructor marks it, maybe it's a draft, and this is an official way, a supported and acceptable way for me to get a bit of feedback from one of my friends and colleagues, right? We'll use a tool through D2L. So you may see additional tools. One other point I would just make, and again, it will depend on the course, but we try to limit email these days between students and instructors. I think it's just because, you know, we all get so much email. And a lot of conversations are really not that conducive to email. It's much easier to either have them synchronously in class or office hours or something like that, virtually or in person, or it's something that I would really, or we would really like you to post on the discussion board because it's a worthwhile contribution, right, to advance the discussion. Other people really should see it because it's part of the course and the dialogue of the course. Or it's a question about the assignment. Yeah, please put it on there because if I can answer it for you, I've probably answered it for 10 other people, right? That saves me time. It also saves you time having to wait for a reply. So again, this will depend on the course, but usually, certainly what I say with email is, you know, personal, confidential, anything to do with the syllabus or those policies or a question about your grade on an assignment. Email is not only the best platform for that, it's crucial to use because that way we have a written record, right? But a course or an assignment question, generally D2L or again, class or an individual appointment. You know, if you want to discuss a topic, for example, you're going to find that probably the best way to reach your instructor. So let's take a break here and do a little demo, and then I'll give it some additional advice on learning asynchronously, and then point out some resources. Let's see. I'm just looking at the questions here, if there's anything to answer right now. I'll come back to the Brightspace one. The syllabus, I'll come back to in a second because you'll see that through D2L. RAMs, okay. All right, we'll come back to those. I'm thinking, oh no, we'll do it later. And RAMs is a bit tough. So let me pull up the browser instead here, and I will share my screen again. And let's have a look at D2L first is on my list. So I will go here. Share screen, Chrome. Okay, so once you log in, you go to my.ryerson.ca, you'll enter your username and password, and actually once you go in, you'll see this, okay? And actually, why don't I just do it right from the start for you. So my.ryerson.ca, here I am. Whoops, can't spell my own name, that's a problem. Let's try that. So we'll log in, and then you're going to see D2L open up. If it doesn't, you click on Online Courses and Organizations. While we're here, this is where you would access RAMS, which is your Ryerson Administrative Management Student System. I don't know, something like that. That's where you're, you know, looking at your timetable, for example, your grades. Apps is actually helpful to have a look at because although there are many ways that we can get into our Google Workspace account, this is a really simple one, right? If you want to get into your Ryerson Gmail, your Ryerson Google Drive, your Ryerson Google Chat, that's another one you can use. I won't talk about it much, but you know, you can have chat obviously through Google. These you probably won't see because you'll have student accounts and they're not particularly important for what we're discussing tonight. But online courses and organizations is how we get into D2L. You'll see something like this on the screen. You won't have nearly as many on here. And again, I'm seeing ones for courses I'm taking plus courses that I'm teaching. So I just taught a course this summer. I'll go into it here. And I'll just switch it to a mode that's going to look something similar to what you're going to see. And you'll see a banner, right? So that's the name of the course, obviously. For those who are brand new to learning through D2L, the Chang School has done a good job here of putting resources front and center. I'll actually put my pen on here. One sec. Spotlight tool. Vanishing pen. So they've done a good job, I think, putting links to technical resources up there. The other thing I would mention is the scavenger hunt. I haven't done the Ryerson one. I did one at a college that I've also taught at recently as well. It was pretty cheesy, but again, for those of you brand new to learning in this environment, the whole idea is go look for the announcement. Oh, I found the announcement, right? But again, it gets you thinking, right? You'll see a calendar if your instructor has put different dates, for due dates. This will actually put the course calendar in, and I think on your main page you even see a little amalgamation if you're taking multiple courses. If you have a test or something open, right, that will remind you, or an assignment deadline coming up, it will remind you that you have to do something. There's an action item that's necessary. And then you'll see announcements. It goes in reverse order. That's why my end of term announcements are here. But your instructor will almost always post announcements. I'd say probably once every week. Sometimes they just send you an email. It's like being on a mailing list. You may not see them here, but very common for announcements to be posted here now. And that will help you keep on track, particularly if this is an asynchronous course. They'll help you keep on track in terms of where you're supposed to be, what to look for, reminders of due dates. I mean, it ultimately is your responsibility, but we're obviously here to help you through this. We don't just cut you loose. So this is important to look at. I'll take my annotation tool off. There we go. We'll go back up here. So course materials is probably the most important link. In fact, I would say it is the most important link. Many of us use the overview section to post things like office hours or a brief biography. So have a look at that. You'll see certain due dates on the schedule. Uh-oh, I'm way overdue with my assignments. But you'll often see the course schedule in there, again, if we've plugged everything in correctly. You may not see everything all at once on the first day. Let's be realistic here. The materials are ready, but that doesn't mean that everything in this course shell is ready. And in fact, we don't want that either, because things like assignments, we want to be revisiting those every term. We want to be improving on them and trying to customize them to meet our students' needs. So you won't see everything all at once, but you certainly will see a syllabus, which is probably specific to your section of the course, maybe a link to student services, things like that. The course outline for those who are taking a fully online, asynchronous, distance course. If this works, it is. This is prepared separately. This will be common. It doesn't matter when you take the course and who's teaching it. This is the common set of materials that you'd be using, right? And you see all sorts of breakdowns and helpful information there. Course materials is typically where you'll see readings, right? I've had readings for students through the library, so they access them through here. I had one, and then they were using a textbook. You may not have this. You may just have a note saying, you have to buy a textbook. Here's where you buy it. Here's what it's called. You'll probably see assignment information. This is often where you submit the assignments as well. So I would go in here, I download the instructions, you simply drag and drop. Again, it's exactly like going into Gmail and putting an attachment on a file, and then I would submit it through there. I won't see anything in grades here because I was teaching the course. I wasn't a student in it. But yeah, I mean, this is obviously not going to look like that for you, but you will see grades in here as materials graded, and you'll usually see feedback alongside that. As the material is sort of pushed out to you. Now, these won't look exactly the same in your course, but it's the same basic idea that you go in here and you'll find all of your course materials. You can also access things like tests, which are under quizzes. There's no tests in D2L. It all shows up as quizzes, even if it's a lot more than a quiz. You'll see that through there. That's also another way to access it if you don't have a link right there under materials. Discussions. So that's where you'll find discussions. Again, you may see a link in a more convenient spot that says course materials and then discussions, but that's how you would get into the tool. You would see boards here like this, different forums. So I made one here that says course Q&A. So even in a even in a class where you have a classroom component, a live component, you may still see a forum here for course Q&A. But certainly if you're doing this fully online, it's all asynchronous. This is where you're going to do the bulk of your participation, right? So probably you'd see a question here or somewhere else in the course materials, and then you'd go in and you'd have that discussion. So I won't go in and show you what a discussion looks like, just to respect the privacy of the students who were taking the course. But many of you have seen discussion forums before, so Reddit or something like that. Obviously, very different in terms of content, expectations around civility and being constructive. Obviously, very different than social media, but the same idea really, that you're contributing to a topic. And if you are doing some group work, you may find the Groups tab being used. And again, your instructor will give you all sorts of information about how to use that. Those announcements on the main page, you can also find them here. So yeah, I did these maybe once a week or so for students just to help them along. And one thing to watch for is you usually get an introductory message or two, and your instructor there will set out all of the key information, where to find things, how they prefer to be contacted. Most of us are no strangers to this. We've been doing it for a long time. So we've learned over the terms and over the years what students tend to respond to and how to really make that work, especially when we're working online. And especially even more so when there's no regularly scheduled class time, because we want to try and encourage that interaction and participation. So that's, I would say, the most important thing around getting into D2L, looking at announcements, class materials, where do I find assignment information, how do I submit assignments. There was no quiz in this course. Actually, I made a short one. Okay, this was like a sample quiz, but you would access your quizzes and tests through here if you're doing that through D2L. One thing you want to think about when you go and do something like a scavenger hunt or you look at the resources, there are often sample quizzes. So if you've never taken a quiz in an environment like this before, and you want to see what the timer looks like and how the quiz is formatted, in a typical way, there's usually samples you can take. I know students have often found those helpful. There's also something to do under notifications. I would suggest you go in there and you can tell D2L to email you when certain things happen. So when I post something, it emails you saying, that your instructor posted this, or a grade is, pushed out to you, right? Because something's been graded, or you have a due date coming up. You can set D2L to notify you by email, or I think by text message now. It wasn't enabled a while back. They may have changed that. But it definitely will alert you, right? So you can be proactive in setting that up. It's ultimately your responsibility to manage your learning, but between the supports we offer at the university and using technology effectively, I think you'll find this to be very helpful in terms of staying on top of things. There's also the Chatbot. If you go down, if you've used a chatbot before, I use them, when you contact Rogers, because you have a problem with your internet, right? And they say go on the internet, and like, okay, well, that didn't help. But a lot of businesses have these now, and Ryerson has sort of jumped on that bandwagon with the Chatbot. So a lot of organizations are using these. It's one of those AI-powered things, so you can certainly ask it a question. I haven't played around with it too much. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but why not? And then there's also a link here to the same resources I'm going to point out shortly. So that is D2L. I'll stop. And are there any questions in here, Annie, that are really D2L specific, maybe that I can answer right now?
Well, Michael, I think a lot of them are about like the courses themselves and
Okay.
kind of like, yeah, like the registration, kind of like when they show up. I do think that Jonathan had a really great question about kind of the accessibility factor, but when you can, you have a lot more knowledge about D2L than I do. So can
Yes, thank you for that question, Jonathan. Does it include, I don't know specifically about read aloud. As far as I understand, for a tool to be an official tool, this is what I was saying earlier, right? And I'm actually really glad you asked that question because I was really focused there on, privacy, for example. But as part of that process, the tools also go through an accessibility review and an accessibility audit. So I think you will find that uh, tools are compatible with voice screen reader software. JAWS, for example, I don't know read aloud particularly well. I'm happy if you want to stick around, I can look it up after. We have staff strictly dedicated to that issue, to that question at Ryerson. If not through the Chang School, then certainly through the library. And also through a learning and teaching center here at the university. We have accessibility technologists who could definitely answer that question more than I. Go ahead, Annie.
absolutely agree. Yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to also say that we also do have another workshop specifically on the AAS. So that was what Michael was talking about, the academic support service at Ryerson Oaks University. So that is going to be happening. Sorry to interrupt your session a little just announcement. So that's going to be happening, I believe, next Monday, sorry, next Tuesday, because Monday is a holiday, September 7th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. So the same time. We will have kind of like more in-depth discussions about assistive technologies and just like what kind of services that AS offer kind of in conjunction to the regular kind of like D2L functions that students like can access probably for free, most likely for free. And then like whether or not you're registered with the AAS, like kind of like we'll have like a learning specialist that will walk you through the process or kind of like maybe probably give you like kind of services you can access without fully registered. So whatever kind of like D2L doesn't have, AS will probably have. So please keep asking questions, but also encourage you to come out to that session. And then there are going to be other sessions available, which I will just talk about after Michael's done his lecture and his Q&A. But thank you so much for that question. That was really valuable.
Yeah, typically, if a student is registered through academic accommodation support, they would coordinate that with, it's usually the library and another office here called the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching, CELT, and they coordinate adaptive technology needs. If it's a more general question, it may not have to go through that, but again, I'm happy to have a look at that. But generally speaking, the expectation is if it's an official tool, it should work. That doesn't, of course, mean that individualized accommodation isn't helpful or necessary on top of that. So, okay, great stuff. So we can come back to some of those additional questions then at the end. They're a little more to do with teaching and learning and not so much the platforms. I'll just mention then in terms of the platforms, just to show you what a module will look like for the average asynchronous student or asynchronous course. I will pull up Chrome again. So again, I'll use my intro course that I was teaching this summer as an example. So these are the purpose-built online courses, right? So there's usually a link, it says modules or something like that. And then this is the stuff that we've built for you in the background, right? This is a separate platform that's maintained by CE and by the university. So they're built-in modules of 12, and then the 13th is usually a review week or an exam week in some courses. So you would go each week through the module. So the first one in this case obviously is introductory. In this case, we talk about the writing process and communication theory. So you'll see your intro, you'll see learning objectives. Those are important. Take a look at those. The expectation really is by the end of this, you should be able to do that. And that's exactly how we evaluate you. So there's no real secret to learning. It's a skill, learning how to learn. And again, I'll show you some resources for that too at the end by providing a few links. But inside information here. The whole idea really is that we've set this up so that by the time you're done this, you know how to do these things, right? Maybe not all that well yet. That's okay. Skills have to be perfected over time, but it's a starting point at least. You'll find information on what to read for that week there. Could be a textbook, could be a link, it could be a note to see D2L to go access a library resource. And then you actually get into the content, right? So you'll see certain boxes there that might have either definitions or case studies or stop and reflect type of activities and points. You'll see images, you'll see videos, all that sort of good stuff, and you can navigate along the side there, right? And typically at the end of a module, you'll see a summary, and then there's usually something on what you have to do that week. Many weeks it's go to the discussion board and do something, right? Other weeks it could be your assignment is due, reminder, right? So you'll probably find that things like you won't find a lot in terms of date references. The way that we do this is that these modules they're not permanent, they're updated regularly, but they're supposed to exist beyond just the life of one course, right? So I got the module already, I'll use it for a couple of terms and then we'll update it, right, to keep it current. So things like specific dates or the contact information for the person teaching the course, you always have to go on D2L and go on the syllabus to look for that because that will change from term to term. But this is basically what a module looks like. You can print them, very easy just to grab a PDF of everything if you want to do that. In fact, I would encourage you to do that because you lose access to the course shell and all that material, a couple months after the term ends. So if you want to keep copies of these notes, which I love to do just for future reference, print them, either a PDF or physically print them if that's your preference, so that you can keep them handy for later. So that's what a module would look like for the asynchronous folks out there. And if I could just say before I demo Google, in terms of those who are learning asynchronously, so you don't have that weekly time where you're all together and sort of the instructor helps you stay, helps you move along basically with the course. That's an additional challenge. And again, it always was even before the pandemic for those who were taking fully online / distance / online courses that are basically asynchronous. So you need to set your own schedule there. But if I can help you, do that, here's what I would suggest. If you look at a typical week, there's some debate over when the week starts in the academic world. For me, it's a Monday. My feeling is Monday to Friday and then give students a bit of a break on the weekend because I need the break usually to catch up on something else. For other folks, they take it literally, right? That if a module ends on a Friday, the week begins on the Saturday. Okay, all right, fine. So either the Saturday or the Monday, a new week starts. The syllabus will say this week it's module 1. So you then go in, you'd go locate module 1. You make your posts and everything for module 1. And that's what you need to be doing. So I would suggest in a typical week, by the Tuesday, try and skim the material. If there's a discussion to do that week, which there probably is, get an initial post up there. Try and look ahead to the rest of the week. Plan out your schedule. If you have an assignment due either that week or the week after, this is a good time to make plans for that. By midweek, let's say on Wednesday, ideally you've at least made some sort of a contribution to the discussions. I would say this is a good point to make sure that you're finished with the readings and the bulk of the activities, particularly if you have a due date for something on the Friday. I would say by the Thursday, if you have a question, and again, this is especially when something's due on the Friday, which won't be the case every week, but Thursday is always a good time for reflection, right? Do I have questions? Do I need to talk to my instructor about my assignment idea or something? When we say don't leave it to the last minute, I think Thursday's reasonable. Again, some might say Wednesday. I think Thursday's reasonable. When the question comes in Friday morning and something's due Friday night, obviously we're here to help, but it may be tougher to do that, right, when there isn't much time left. So I would say, and again, this is about your Tuesday planning, thinking about what needs to happen by Thursday so you have everything you need to get done what you need to get done by the end of that week. When you have something due, you'll almost always find it's Friday night, 11:59 p.m. If it's a question of participation is over for that week, that's usually when it is. Again, it will differ a bit depending on the course and the instructor, but Fridays, it's usually a safe bet. That's when something is due. And again, quite frankly, if you're doing a course that has been virtualized, where you are predominantly synchronous and you're meeting online, in all likelihood, your assignment is probably still going to be due via D2L on that Friday night. Tests and exams, a little bit different. I'm sure, I haven't checked the chat, but I'm willing to bet there's already a question in there about that. That will really depend. Obviously, in a classroom environment, usually in the Chang school, if there is an exam, it's, I think, in week 13. Or thereafter. It's right at the end of the term, usually in the same room at the same time, just a week later. Historically, for distance courses, those asynchronous ones like I've been teaching, where there is an exam, historically, it's an exam that's done in person. So you do have to go to the campus and write the exam, or if you're somewhere else in the world, you have to go to certain places that are properly accredited, I guess, for that. In this environment, a lot of things have changed. Thankfully, if something good comes out of all this, it's that I think we're starting to rethink that whole testing thing now. And you will see it's very common now to actually do tests and exams online at a distance. There are different ways in which that is done. In a course that's asynchronous like this, you might have a quiz or a test to do at a certain time. For example, I say to students, we have a test. It's going to happen on Friday, whatever it is. You can do it any time during that 24-hour period that is Friday. You do it on D2L. You click on this link, and then a timer starts for 2 hours, and you do your multiple choice, or you write your answers in. You can do all kinds of things online like that. That's one way to do it. If it's a course with a synchronous component and you do have live class time, there are instructors who have tried to sort of adopt the classroom model to testing. So maybe you do all have to go on Zoom at a certain time and keep your camera on while you do it. There are remote proctoring services that some people use where you have to be monitored essentially while you're doing it live. I don't. I have some opinions on all of that, which I'm happy to give when we're not recording maybe. But you really need to take your instructor's lead on that. No one is going to be forced onto campus to write an exam, certainly not in the fall. I can tell you that. And if for some reason someone is trying to do that, give your student union here a call, because I'm not sure that's not supposed to be happening. I can say that with confidence. So, okay, couple resources that I'll leave you with, then I'll do a little Google demo, and then we'll take questions. And these you can click on if you're in the deck right now. The Chang School has, I think, a good overview of the differences between online and virtualized. So if you want more nuance, more information on what I was, I think, trying to convey there, you can have a look there. There's more on materials and exams, although, again, I'll answer some of those questions now. But that's a good resource for all of that later. The distance education folks put together a superb site, resources for learning online. So if Zoom is a problem, if Google Docs is a problem, you literally just go there and click Zoom, and you'll get all these resources, plus information on technical support and troubleshooting. There's also free software. I mentioned Office. Students have a free license to Office 365, so if you want the latest version of Word, maybe, there's information on how you can get that. And then the last link is, again, it's through the Chang School, but it also covers other university services, health and wellness, academic success services, and other campus services. So important to know where to go when you have questions, because it's not always it's not always one place. Although I usually find with the Chang School, if you do reach out to them, they're very good about trying to put you in trying to get you the right contact info so that you can get the best possible info. So just before some Q&A, I'll just mention the Google Workspace suite. So just to show you what it looks like when you go into that My Drive, and I got there when I logged in through my.ryerson.ca, and I went to Apps. I got there to Google Drive. This is just a storage space, right? And this is where you can share certain files, maybe with specific group members if you're doing group work, or publicly if you want, or with others at Ryerson. When you click New, you see all the different things you can do. And these basically just take the place of your favorite office tools. Google Docs is Word, Google Sheets is Excel, Slides is PowerPoint. Forms, if you're collecting data, you may fill out a couple of those because your instructor has questions of you. Google Jamboards are sort of like whiteboards. You may use those in class for collaboration. But again, all your basic ones are here. Are they as rich and robust as Office? No. I would not be doing a lot of advanced spreadsheet work in Google Sheets. So yeah, if you're taking a statistics course or something, this is probably not for you. But if you just need a good word processor for free, your prof says, I need PDF format, no problem. You just export it as a PDF. So you don't have to use Word. Although again, you can get a free copy. Docs is easy, and it's very easy to share and collaborate, as I said. And then you use it exactly like a word processor. It saves as you're going along too, so you don't have to remember to save. See, look at that, saving, aha, saved. So there's one big problem solved in terms of forgetting to save material. And then again, the spreadsheet program looks just like Excel. So very helpful. You may find if you're doing some collaborative work with your, with your instructor, they may say, here's a document that we've got going. Everybody contribute to it. They might put a link, into Google Drive for you there. Very easy to integrate this stuff into D2L as well. The resources I was mentioning, yeah, I think this is fantastic. Again, the Chang, the video here on what is online learning, I think that's good. And then your link here to university support is also excellent. But I really think the online learning resource, was here before COVID, but they've added a lot to it. So again, you have questions about how to use Zoom, you just pull it up, and there's a link to the university office that supports Zoom, and you can go through the tutorials and troubleshooting if you have questions. So I think that's just a super site in terms of having everything you need right there. So I'll stop. Annie, you have your hand up, and then I know we have a few questions to get to.
Also, just before the questions start, Michael, also want to make the announcement that so this is our first session of a series of webinar that we prepared for you to navigate this academic year. So we'll have different resources. So tomorrow, August 31st, at the same time, 5 to 6:30 p.m., we're going to talk about more like, we're going to have a webinar about academic integrity and kind of like some of the rules and the policies that you adhere to. But also we will also talk about kind of like your rights and the support that you do have access that you are entitled to in terms of if you're filing appeals and if you are kind of like needing people to review your appeals, or if you're what happens when you get kind of that academic misconduct notice, and how to prepare for the notice and hearing. So that will happen tomorrow, and also next Tuesday, September 7th. Like I said, there will be a webinar about the academic accommodation support, as well as learning support from X University. So kind of like some more academic related support content, support with D2L, with online learning. We'll talk about that. And also on the 8th, we'll have a mental health, student mental health and wellness session. So kind of like talking about services and resources that you can access online. So our text support and campaign support assistant Aya. She has put everything, all the registrations in the chat, so you can access them. And also they're up on our website and also sent to you through your emails. I think you've been getting a lot of those. So thank you again for attending this session. And without further ado, I'll pass it back to Michael.
Okay, so let's go back up through the questions. I'll try and do this in chronological order. Hopefully we fix the volume issues. So that actually, it raises a good point around Zoom. You can try and try it out again, even if you don't have hosting privileges in a student account, although I think actually you do now. Never 100% sure if it applies to the Chang School students as well. So don't quote me on that, but you can certainly always get a free account on Zoom. It's limited, but you can always test it out with a friend or something if you're a little unsure about how to use Zoom at this point. But again, if you go back through those resources that I mentioned, I think you'll find a lot there for you. Yes, recording, excellent. Okay, when do you get your syllabus? So the way that this works is you register in a course, right? The course shell, right, that thing I was showing you in D2L, that has to be enabled by the instructor. So the expectation is it's up by the first day of the term. We're usually pretty good about that, but I wouldn't expect it up much before that, right? If Chang classes start the week after Labor Day, right? I wouldn't start, emailing the Chang School unless it's like, Sunday. In all seriousness, and I don't mean to excuse that. I think the earlier the better in terms of when we get it out there. It's just the reality of the timing and the prep. And then it takes, usually, for those who are not yet registered and you're joining, let's say, once that shell is already available, you get the access within 24 hours because it syncs up. The two systems have to sync up. So you'll certainly get it, much like going into a physical classroom. You kind of get it on or around the first day of class. So in terms of what would show on RAMs, if it says TBA, it means they're probably scheduling it. They just may not have a room yet, for example. If it says Internet Distance Ed somewhere in there, that means it's a fully online asynchronous course that won't meet at a regular time. Once you get into that shell, once you see the syllabus, you'll get more information there. But again, if it's showing, let's say, TBA at some point, it means they're obviously still scheduling it. That's not unusual to not have, let's say, a classroom until shortly before. But again, in this case, there wouldn't be a classroom. It would be, well, I don't think, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, if there's anything in Chang that's running in person. In some programs there is, assuming this is going to be online. They just may not have scheduled it in yet, if that's what the issue is.
Yeah, that's to my understanding as well. I don't think any Chang course will be in person.
So yeah, to Joanna's question there about D2L, it's at this point it's a question of if you're already registered, it's really just a question of when the instructor makes the shell available. So certainly before the first day, and hopefully at least a couple days before.
Oh, sorry. I would like to add that, like, I know that instructors have their content ready at different times. So some would actually add, like 2 weeks before or a week before, but that's kind of like really dependent on instructor. So kind of like there is no standard or norm. So if you did get like a lot of syllabi like before, like last semester, it might not be the same this semester. So at this point, it's completely normal to not see the shells up yet.
I see a good question here from Anna about how do you study online courses while you have a full-time job. It's a good question. I mean, everyone's going to have a different opinion on that. I think first of all, the question is going to be, I mean, it's a big question. It depends on what your job is, depends on how many courses you're taking, depends on whether you're, brand new to the field or whatnot, or if you're taking the courses for enjoyment or as a career changer where you may have different expectations. I think really it's really a question of what's the priority, and that may change from week to week. But what's your sort of level of tolerance, right? So you go into a course thinking, you know what, this is a core course. I'm really doing this certificate. It's important to me that I really try hard for that A because it's just so crucial that I have an in-depth knowledge of this material. So that means this course may very well be my priority over that full-time job because I'm looking to get out of that full-time job, right? Um, for many others, it's I'm not sure yet. I'm thinking of a change, or I'm doing this for enjoyment. Maybe there are weeks when you have to just let that go, right? The fact that you can't have that A every week for discussions, right? And again, most of us in terms of grading are quite flexible and reasonable in respecting that. Um, but yeah, and I think it's also just being realistic. I mean, it is tough to take, I would say, more than two courses a term if you are working full time, particularly if you have family or other care, giving type commitments. But again, it's going to be different for each student. There's good resources around scheduling, time management, setting priorities available through student learning support as well. So you might find that helpful. Go ahead, Annie.
Yes, thank you for letting me chime in sometimes, Michael. Like I
Sure.
wonder, like would it as an instructor, would you also feel like more informed and better if the student kind of reached out to you and be like, well, just so you know that I have this full-time job, I have other responsibilities. So just know that some of my schedules, like when I upload my posts and some maybe delayed, just giving that kind of like preamble and just reaching out to that instructor helpful to kind of like
Yeah,
look.
I think certainly if there's something that is definitely getting in the way for you, it's actually important that you let us know. Just you were talking about appeals before. We don't need to know the particulars, and please don't give me medical information. I not only respect your privacy; it's a question of your rights. And also the fact that I'm not a medical doctor. So, I mean, who am I to say how long of an extension you should get for something? I don't know. So there is a way to deal with that, right? You take that into the Chang School, you submit it, they verify the documentation. If you're registered through academic accommodation support, they would do all of that. They send me a letter just saying, hey, they don't give me the specifics. They just say this person may need extensions from time to time. So, I mean, again, it's important that we have that conversation without getting into those specifics. Just tell me what you need is usually the way I frame it. Um, if it's going to be every single week, well, okay. I mean, let's think that through. It's been very different over the past year, obviously, so that's different. At other times it may be, maybe this is something to think about for next term if you're going to miss a lot of class, maybe. So, I mean, it really does depend on the circumstance, but definitely if something is getting in the way, right? You need an extension, or there's something really problematic going on. Very important to let us know, just in case. Sometimes students appeal grades after the fact, and I would say on the whole, it's not really even a question of whether they're successful or not with the appeal. I mean, it's not like I get paid based on student appeals. Whether not for that. I mean, if you have real problems with me, that's probably an issue. But on something like that, it's actually really it's upsetting, quite frankly, because if I had just known, I would have been very kind to or very happy to help. So, definitely let us know if there's something that's getting in the way, especially if it's sort of a one-off thing. See, plugs for the workshop. To summarize my D2L question, why do I not sit on D2L? Yeah, again, I think to Alice, I think it's just it probably hasn't been made available to you yet. Okay. Oh, right. There's a Q&A section too. I forget with webinars that we have both. Just having a look here. I'll get to those in a second. This is about the recording. Right. Yeah, Office 365 and Google Suite. So, I mean, it's sort of a preference there, but I think you'll find Google is more widely used in your courses. One of my classes is synchronous online, but the module is in person. I'm not sure about that. That's a good question. I need to know more about what you mean by what the module is in person means. So if you want to type that in the chat, I can definitely rethink that one a bit. Time limits on Zoom as a student. There are time limits if you are creating your own account. I think it's limited to an hour or something like that. I believe, sorry, 40 minutes. Yeah, that's exactly right to Ayad's point. Whether you can get around that with your Ryerson account or not, I'm not 100% sure. But maybe Annie or Ayat, if you've run meetings through your Ryerson account. See, I have obviously a faculty account, so it's very different. I just got my license up to 1,000 now. I've got a big course this term. 40 minutes more than 2 people, yeah.
I think for your regular Ryerson account, it's like the free one. I also, from a student perspective, I think it's also 40 minutes. Yeah, so whether or not it makes sense for you to upgrade, that's to you as well. Also, Michael, I think there was another question earlier in the chat asking about like whether or not you can pick up the textbooks in person at the library, Ryerson Library. I think I should know this too, but
yeah, good question. Oh, sorry, the Zoom point. I was also going to say consider Google Meet. If it's like 2 or 3 people, I find Google Meet works really well, and there's no issues there of time limits. So if we're talking like a meeting with a small group, I would just use Google Meet. If you're trying to teach a class, maybe you want Zoom, but then you should be getting paid. You shouldn't be paying. Okay, the question was about, sorry, Annie, that was about textbooks and materials. That's a good question. I believe the bookstore is probably open for like curbside type of pickup. I'm not sure if they were reopening the store. I know they've really been pushing like, we'll mail you the stuff, we'll ship it. But perhaps someone here with CZACs can look into that for us and let us know. With same thing with the library. Again, there's limited in-person services like study space, and I believe you can pick up and check out some resources. If there's maybe a textbook on reserve or something like that, but CZACs can look into that. And I see another. I feel like I missed something up here. Hang on. No, maybe not. Well, if I did, feel free to put it in the chat again if I missed something other than the ones I see in the Q&A. Okay. How does a midterm and final exam work? I'm looking at the Q&A here. So I mentioned that you will probably see that through D2L. You may do the actual test in D2L. You may also have something that's proctored, again, in the context of remote teaching. So that would depend on your instructor and on your course. The question about instruction mode is in-person, location, downtown. I see Annie's typing something, so I'll wait for her to type that.
No, I am typing, trying to like give more information about the textbook, so I'm not in.
Oh, great. Okay. Sorry, it says Annie Yang is typing an answer. Okay. It doesn't matter.
Oh yes,
oh, there it is.
Also, yes, I
the
was.
cursor was on it right there.
No, yeah.
So the instruction mode says in person and then downtown for location. So the question really is if it has a room attached to it, because if it's in person, it would have a room attached to it. If it's, and again, if you want to, there may be a couple programs that are doing something in person. I'm not aware of any. But if you want to reach out to CSACs, we can look into that for you and get more information. But again, if it's going to be in person, there will be a room number on there at some point.
Yeah, I am not aware. Like, if you don't mind sharing kind of your program, maybe like to one of us, or like if you really want information, because yeah, we can help you, but I'm not sure any chain courses are doing any in person. Maybe except for like lab, and
I,
then
I'm also thinking and I know what someone was asking earlier about. I went on RAMS and I clicked the thing that said, show course material, and I didn't see anything. It was something like that. There's a couple oddities in RAMS that we never use. Like, you should see the course description, but it may say view course materials. I don't think you're ever going to see anything in there. So don't worry about that. When you get into the D2L shell, regardless of what kind of a course you're taking, you should see information in there in the syllabus, for example, about resources. So
yeah.
you don't really have to worry about that until the first day of class. Okay, what else do we have here? Can you share a screen? Yes, you can on Google Meet. Where are the D2L quizzes? So if you go under assessment and then click quizzes, that's where you'll find the list of them. And again, in the world of D2L, a quiz is anything that's like a test. Quiz, test, exam, you'll find them there. Your instructor may also, in the main course material section, post a link, quiz 1 or something. So like a shortcut, you'll also see those there. Okay, so if I forgot your question, I apologize. Feel free to put it in the chat again so that we can sort of bump it up. And maybe we'll sort of take a last call here. We'll wait a sec if there's questions.
Are you going to share the Google Meet later, Michael, after this, or waiting for more questions?
Oh, in terms of how to use it?
Yeah, there was a question about sharing screen on Google Meet.
Yeah, you can. Let me see if I can pull it open here.
Or is it just a question asking if you can share?
I think it was just a question of
Okay,
if you can.
gotcha.
Yeah, and
Gotcha.
yes, you can. I mean,
Yes,
Google Meet works
absolutely.
very similar to Zoom from a user's perspective. It's quite straightforward, and you can do the same stuff with virtual backgrounds and everything. It's gotten a lot better over the last while. And those are very interesting workshops. I'll put in a plug here, or I'll offer my support that I really do encourage you to check out the other workshops that your student association has planned for you. Very important stuff on appeals and understanding rights and responsibilities, and certainly academic integrity. That is of vital importance to understand policies around that, because there's a lot less flexibility, I think, than students realize. And it's the job, part of the job most of us hate, because we're like policy agents, like, you did something wrong. Now I will say at Ryerson that the policies are supposed to stress education, and I would say on the whole they do. But that said, I mean, why go down that rabbit hole if you can get a better sense of expectations from the start? So I do encourage you to take those workshops. So other questions? Anything I missed? Anything from our organizers?
Oh, we do have one more in the Q&A.
When are we starting? I want to say the 13th, but the undergrad classes start on the 7th. So
yeah,
I don't know why they can never get that lined up, but whatever.
yeah, I am not sure about the in and outs. I think chain school like always started a little bit later.
Yeah.
And like starting last year, I think they just pushed it back a week because of COVID.
Yeah.
But it's definitely the 13th of September.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you will find that instructors have a lot less flexibility than you may realize when it comes to that. I used to love going to, love, it's strong. We're going to the 8 a.m.s that I have to teach, and the students going, why are you doing this to us? Like, it's not me. Trust me, I don't want to be here at 8 a.m. either. So
it's like, yeah, kind of like channeling the anger on the wrong end. It's like,
yeah, so regardless, so isn't it nice we don't Well, Chang never had the 8 a.m.s. There are some, actually,
Yeah.
Chang has, other than some weekend intensive, it's always been evenings. But they used to do 6 to 9, I think, and they've now pushed it 6 to 6:30. So that's good. Everyone has a bit of a dinner break. Oh, I'm very glad to hear that, Susan. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Pascal. CB, excellent. Well, I'll stick around for a few more minutes if there's any other questions. Otherwise, enjoy your time here. Welcome. Have a great term.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and have a lovely rest of the day.